Bro, I talked to a few rappers, and obviously they're not woke rappers, they're not lyrical rappers. A bunch of them feel like Kendrick killed hip-hop, bro.
Lobbies and gentlegrams, for the first time in 35 years, like pearly white veneers, hip-hop has been replaced in the voice of the charts. And it starts with the beef. Many people will say the stray sent Drake's way made the mainstream feel away and sway from rap, country's taken its place, and hey, how can hip-hop exist in a space where its biggest act was just disgraced on the stage of the Super Bowl, the Grammys, and every GNX date?
Spicy.
Did Kendrick stop hip-hop from having a run, or is a shift underway? A new era begun? We're gonna break it all down and really get to the facts, but first, like and subscribe if you think real hip-hop is back.
I study
Rapaholics
for a living.
So, Lobbers and Gentlegrams, a lot of people perceived the battle between Drake, Kendrick Lamar, and temporarily J. Cole was a battle for who deserved the crown, who deserved to be the top guy, right? All rooted in Kendrick's proclamation of F the Big Three is just Big Me. Well, as we all know, Kendrick won that battle, and as a result, of course, Drake drops a lawsuit because he can't fathom the fact that Kendrick is really now putting belt to butt on the streaming charts. A big part of his lawsuit against UMG was emphasizing that these Kendrick numbers can't be real, right? They had to be using fake streams, bots, specifically on Not Like Us. And the irony is that it was kind of a big passing of the crown moment in terms of who was the king of the charts, because when Not Like Us first came out, it kept beating these streaming records. The most streamed song in one day, the fastest song to make it to 300 million streams on Spotify. You know who held all of these records before Kendrick Lamar beat them with Not Like Us? It was Drake. So that was kind of symbolic, and then this entire victory lap that Kendrick has been on, yes, he's done a lot of amazing things to unify his people, whether it's through the pop-out concert, having a lot of underground West Coast artists on GNX, but a lot of the major moments that he made had massive numbers behind them, which showcased that new heights were being reached in the mainstream by a new rapper, someone other than Drake, right? Stadium tours, something Drake has never done. 4 #1 hits in the span of a year. GNX being the highest selling hip hop album, I believe, in both 2024 and 2025. And simultaneously with Drake filing his lawsuit against UMG, a lot of people believe he's either been not blackballed, but not necessarily had the same support on his music from the label, since, you know, he is suing them after all, or he's been kind of testing the waters on potentially going independent in the future and seeing how his numbers look without the big machine behind him. We saw him post a bunch of music on his Instagram and Plot Twist account without the massive backing of the record labels, kind of treating them like Lucy's. We saw him do all those Iceman live streams with his mid music that he would preview on the streams and then just randomly post them on streaming platforms when he felt like it. It was an unconventional, low effort way to release music. And with that, Drake has seen a dip in terms of his new music making a big impact on the charts. Meanwhile, a shift has happened where Kendrick Lamar has become the highest selling rapper in the mainstream ever since this beef ended. I bring all that up to say I think this is one of the elements as to why people talk about a shift happening. Another one being when Kendrick released Watch the Party Die, where he kind of professed that a lot of the toxic elements of the culture need to be cut off. A line in the sand needed to be drawn. And with that, we have seen a lot of real MCs, real hip-hop moments be championed.
I study
real MCs
for a living.
Whether it's through Tyler, the Creator, releasing his most personal album to date, which also became his most successful album. We saw the rise of Doechii, who brought, in my opinion, a higher level of lyricism, consciousness, cohesiveness to her projects than the other female rappers who've emerged over the last few years, like Alato or Sexy Red or Glorilla. I do love Glorilla, though. We also saw the Clips have their highest first week sales since their first album in 2002. 23 years ago, Lord willing. Jid is on a massive tour. He just sold out a 2,500 person venue in my city. He's been doing that all across North America, and he brought along as the opening act Chris Patrick, who is a massive talent, who even made it onto Kai Cenat's live stream to spit a freestyle. And he's been going viral ever since. I say all this to say, I just named you some of the biggest moments in hip-hop over the last 12 months, all deriving from artists who put lyricism at the forefront. Ever since the industry turned on Drake, a lot of his peers turned on him, from Metro Boomin, The Weeknd, Future, A$AP Rocky, Rick Ross, etc. We've seen him kind of blackball American artists and American journalists.
London rappers, the best lyricists in the world, mark my words. I don't care what nobody says, nobody can out-rap London. Nobody. No disrespect to America, no disrespect to my country, but nobody can out-rap London rappers. This is the best, highest level. This is what I aspire to be.
All these losers, these like, you know, like storied journalists and like this guy and that guy who like feels so entitled to this interview about, and Drake never does anything for like this type of media.
This is very significant because a big factor as to why people say hip-hop is on the decline is because while Drake had his run at the top, one big thing Kendrick Lamar criticized him for was running off to Atlanta to steal the sound, culture, and production from the natives of that city, the up-and-coming artists who went on to dominate the mainstream, right? Throughout his run at the top, Drake was known to find these lesser-known artists, hop on their track, and it would blow up. From Conan to The Weeknd to Lil Baby to the Migos, we've seen him do this year after year. It was a very mutually beneficial relationship, but for the fans, it definitely gave these younger artists a newer, wider set of eyeballs. Now, before Rapaholics was a big thing, I was just an aspiring little YouTuber looking to make his way in, and I actually was lucky enough to have a really good discussion with Alan Kingdom. If you guys don't know who Alan Kingdom is, really talented artist. He did the hook on Kanye West's song All Day. You know the part where it goes like, I took a young sweet bread and I reached into my ear. Dope artist, but he made a great point in that, yeah, Drake often offers these stimulus packages, right? Like we've seen him on this run doing these features, putting these different, you know, lesser known artists on. However, name me one time that Drake has actually done that with a real lyricist. I don't want to make this a Drake video, but I think it's a very important point, right? Because the overall discussion here is that hip-hop is dying. When Drake was at the top doing all these massive hits with these different rappers, they were all melody driven, which isn't a bad thing necessarily, but as a result, these songs became massive hits and the overall sound of music pivoted more towards trap. SoundCloud rap took off at the same time. The subject matter kind of felt stale. A lot of street talk, gangs, violence, pill popping. I did half a Xan, 13 hours till I land. This is exactly what Kendrick was talking about on Watch the Party Die, right? We even kill the killers because they like taking innocent lives. Meanwhile, Drake felt betrayed by a lot of American artists, so he's deliberately not collaborated with them, not handed out these stimulus packages ever since the beef has ended. And I mean, the beef kind of derived from First Person Shooter, which was all about collaboration. Meanwhile, Kendrick said, no, this is about competition. This is about wanting to be the best.
I love when artists grit their teeth.
You created this massive cultural award-winning anthem out of a battle rap song.
My intent from day one was to always keep the nature of it as a sport. I think a lot of people was putting rap to the back and you didn't see that grit, you didn't see that bite anymore.
And because hip-hop agreed with him and ultimately crowned him the victor of that battle, he's now leading the culture. And I think the shift that you're seeing all derives from the message that Kendrick was trying to send. You're seeing other massive battles emerge, like the Joey Badman, Ray Vaughn, Daylight beef, and all the other artists who I mentioned earlier in this video who have had massive moments lately. They're all in one way or another putting lyricism first and also have some sort of connection to Kendrick, right? Doechii, she comes from the TDE camp. She modeled her Alligator Bites Never Heal breakout mixtape after Kendrick's Section 80, taking inspiration from the career trajectory he took, where he really put a lot of time and care into his major label debut in Good Kid, Mad City. You saw the Clips have their major moment. They also teamed up for a collaboration with Kendrick. Tyler, the Creator, he was doing Kendrick Lamar freestyles. He was at the pop-out show with Kendrick. He even had a bar on Chromacopia where he rapped Biggest in the City after Kenny. Playboi Carti, another artist who had a massive 2025, he was collaborating with Kendrick Lamar quite heavy on his project this year, which was the highest selling album of the year. And then, of course, the Joey Badman Ray Vaughn battle. That was kind of all off the heels of the energy Kendrick brought in 2024. I say all that to say, whether you think hip-hop is dying or not from a numbers perspective, wherever the direction is headed, I do think is a direct reflection of the outcome of the battle and the message that Kendrick set forth, which is ultimately to place the value back on competition and working hard towards trying to be the best. And anyone who hasn't followed that lead has been left behind. Look at Lil Baby, Travis Scott, and Young Thug this year. They all put out projects, each of them not giving nearly their best foot forward on the work that they produced this year. And because of that, they saw a significant plummet in their sales. Same can be said for Lil Wayne.
Oh, Lil Wayne's just too good. Oh, Lil Wayne's just too good.
my GOAT, who was criticizing Kendrick, feeling like he was more deserving of the Super Bowl halftime show slot as he was gearing up to drop his highly anticipated Carter 6, an album that's obviously held in a high standard just because of the history and legacy of the Carter series. He did an interview in promotion of that album with Rolling Stone where he previewed them some music. And as he did, he looked at the interviewer and told him they could have had some real music at the Super Bowl. Instead, they got that rappity rap stuff. He said he was going to show the world why they made the wrong decision by giving Kendrick that Super Bowl slot instead of him, and that the truth would be revealed when he dropped the Carter 6. What happened? It was bad. But you want to know something weird? Lil Wayne dropped, in my opinion, just as bad of an album in 2020 with his album Funeral. Yes, I know that the stakes were higher just because he called this a Carter album, but I do think that because of the climate that we're in, the bar that was raised in 2024 with the beef, with the moments Kendrick was making, the fans are not settling for mediocrity anymore. And because of that, artists who are not putting their best foot forward are going to feel the wrath of the fans. And that's exactly what happened with Lil Wayne. Even DJ Big Mac of Akademiks.
Those 3 Big Macs are for me.
DJ Big Mac of Akademiks had said that he talks to a lot of rappers, and he said specifically, word for word, not those woke, conscious rappers. Of course, he talks to the NBA young boys, the Lil Yachty's, the 21 Savages. I don't know who specifically told him this, but he said that his rap friends have been telling him they feel like Kendrick killed hip-hop, made it all about battling, and that they don't even feel secure in dropping albums of their own because of the overall headspace that fans are in.
Bro, I talked to a few rappers, and obviously they're not woke rappers, they're not lyrical rappers. A bunch of them feel like Kendrick killed hip-hop, bro. This is what they told me. He made hip-hop so lame where it's like, it's just over-analyzing shit. Like, this is about to be like the whole genre's battle rap. They feel like it's harder to get attention doing what they did because Kendrick just turned this shit into a Me Too movement.
But I would counter that and say this isn't the fans' fault. We were pacified with this melodic mumble music for many years at this point. And people are waking up and realizing they want something bigger, something better. It's just that no one's really delivered that yet. And that's the problem. You can't rely on one man to save an entire genre of music. In my opinion, hip-hop from a mainstream perspective has been on the decline since around 2018. And I think the most important metric to judge that is how many massive culture-stopping, innovative albums that we get in a single year. 2018, we had a plethora of them. From Astroworld to Kids See Ghosts, Daytona, Cardi B's project, Nipsey's project. And from a mainstream perspective, the highest selling album of that year, Drake's Scorpion. 2017 was the same thing. We had Kendrick have the biggest album of that year with Damn. Drake had More Life, Jay-Z had 444, Future dropped 2 back-to-back #1 albums, the Migos had their breakout debut album Culture. I don't need to go through year by year, but every single year you had several massive blockbuster projects release from rappers, and that's what put hip-hop at the top of the charts. After 2018, that kind of stopped. We're talking from a mainstream perspective here, right? Because this whole conversation is rooted in the lack of hip-hop presence on the charts, which we're going to touch on shortly in this video. But I also want to draw a parallel to the first time that a rapper, a massive rapper with a powerful voice, said that hip-hop was dead. We're going to touch on that also very shortly.
Spicy.
But yeah, I named you all the massive projects from 2018. Look at 2019 on the flip side. The only massive project that released that year from a rapper was Igor by Tyler, the Creator, which wasn't even a hip-hop project. He won Best Hip-Hop Album of the Year that year at the Grammys, and he was upset because he felt like they kind of boxed him into a genre that didn't even fit the album that he made. So put it into perspective, right? 2019 was so dry that the biggest hip-hop album that year wasn't even a hip-hop album. And by 2020, in my opinion, is when the mainstream fell completely apart with the emergence of TikTok. I mean, artists pretty much scrapped the entire idea of creating a cohesive, strong body of work and opted in instead to focus on creating viral sound bites that would be perfect for TikTok. That's the year we saw Drake do Tootsie Slide, right? So Mr. Savior of hip hop, he's seen where the trend is going. He's seen that sales are a direct reflection of how viral your song could go. And so he makes a song perfectly suited for virality. Now, in the 2020s decade, and the reason why hip-hop, especially in 2025, has been on the decline is because we have seen less and less of these massive blockbuster culture-shifting projects from the biggest superstars in the game, right? Kanye went ballistic. We got Donda from him in 2021. Okay, so that helped put some numbers on the board for that year. And in that same year, that same week actually, Drake dropped CLB, which the leading single on that project was also tracing TikTok virality. Way Too Sexy, an interpolation of I'm too sexy for this shirt. Or how about his song on that project, Say That You're a Lesbian Girl, Me Too. Girls want girls where I'm from. Yeah, he was moving the culture forward with that one. And really go through all the years of the 2020s decade and try to count on your fingers how many massive projects there were in each of those years. I'm not just talking amazing bodies of work. I'm talking albums that accomplished it all, from directly influencing the sound of the genre to creating massive hits, having a strong message behind them, but also having that commercial success, having the sales. We saw less and less every single year. Aside from Kanye and Drake, Tyler, the Creator, J. Cole, and Kendrick Lamar, they would drop a project once every 2 years around, and those would be big moments. Same with Travis Scott and Metro Boomin, but this decade has not produced any real superstars that can create the type of moments that we saw from the superstars of the 2010s or the 2000s. So each year would kind of get more and more dry from a mainstream perspective. 2022, Kendrick Lamar and Future put some numbers on the board at the beginning of the year, and then Drake and 21 Savage with Her Loss, and Metro Boomin with his massive project Heroes and Villains, they put some numbers on the board at the end of the year. But throughout the middle, when you're looking at the numbers, hip-hop was actually in real time seeing a sharp decline in terms of the percentage that the genre made up in terms of total sales. What I mean by that is, in 2020, if you look at the total amount of music consumed, hip-hop made up about 28.2% of that pie. But by 2023, that number had dropped to about 25.3%. That's over a 10% drop in 3 years. You might be thinking that's not so big, but the real problem lies in the fact that the music that was keeping hip-hop afloat in terms of what was getting the most consumed in the world by 2023, it wasn't actually new albums. It was the older ones, which goes back to my point of there being no new superstars within this decade to bring new major moments to the genre. If you actually look at the total streaming numbers for all hip-hop music in 2023, albums that came out within the last 18 months had actually been down 7.1% since the year before. Meanwhile, the genre's older music had actually been up by 11.3% since the year before, which means that people were listening to old hip-hop albums more in 2023 than in 2022, but they were listening 7.1% less to new albums in 2023 than 2022. And this is a very important stat if you're curious how labels will look at investing in the genre going forward, right? But it's also important to note that we're having this conversation today about hip-hop feeling like it's dead. But meanwhile, all the stats I'm naming you are from 2023. And those stats have only just amplified since 2025. If you look at the charts today, old albums like Kendrick Lamar's Damn, Drake's Take Care, and Kanye West's Graduation are amongst the albums getting the most amount of streams on a daily basis today on Spotify, more than any project pretty much that has released in the last few years. Now, shout out to Whooping Feet on Twitter. Let's take a look at something that he shared out because it's very important to this conversation. In 2023, a year that Kendrick Lamar did not drop an album, no hip-hop album or single reached #1 on the Billboard charts until midway through the year in June. And that was an album, not a song. And that was the longest stretch throughout a year since 1993 where a rap album did not hit #1 on the charts. Then it took until September, the 9th month of the year, for a hip-hop song to go #1 on the charts. But then if you want to say the battle killed hip-hop, Kendrick Lamar killed hip-hop, look at 2024. Kendrick dropped a project and a bunch of songs. He racked up 4 #1 hits of his own in that year. And in 2024, the most #1 hits on the Billboard charts across any genre came from hip-hop. Now by 2025, a year that again Kendrick Lamar did not drop music in, Luther, his song from GNX, spent 13 weeks at #1 on the Billboard charts, the longest running #1 by a rapper this entire decade. GNX is also the highest selling hip-hop album from 2025, and that again came out in 2024, so we still have older albums carrying the sales for this year. And now Billboard has this new rule where essentially if a song has been on the charts longer than 26 weeks, which is half a year, but it's not in the top 25 of the charts, then it goes recurrent on the chart, which basically means Billboard pulls the song from the chart. So Luther, it was under the 25th spot on the Billboard charts this week, but because it's already been on the chart for 26 weeks, Billboard takes it off the charts. That's their new rule to keep new music flowing in to these charts. Because Luther was taken off the charts, it would have been in the top 40, but again, taken off the charts, And because of that, in the top 40 this week, there are no hip-hop songs. And why this is significant is because this is the first time where there is no hip-hop songs in the top 40 of Billboard since 1999. There hasn't been 1 week in the last 35 years, except for this week, where not one hip-hop song is in the top 40. And I find it hilarious that people blame Kendrick Lamar for this when the only reason why there would have been a top 40 hip-hop hit this week is because of Kendrick Lamar. Now, why is this even a discussion? Well, it is important. It's important if you're curious where the future of the genre will go. Oh, damn, wait. Before we do that, my thoughts are all over the place. Let's touch on again the first rapper to ever profess that hip-hop was dead. That would be Nas in 2006, right? Actually, both these points kind of tie into each other. Mainstream versus the underground. So let's take a look at what was going down in 2006. These are the albums that year that had the highest first week sales. You have Nas himself with Hip Hop Is Dead. You have Jay-Z with Kingdom Come, ultimately an underwhelming comeback album. You have T.I. with King. Dope project. The Game as well. He was on a crazy run at this point. He was one of the few that brought the West Coast back. He was a newcomer, keeping hip-hop very exciting at that point. Ties into my larger point of how these days in the 2020s decade, we don't have a lot of new superstars of this generation that are pushing things forward. Back then, when Nas was saying hip-hop was dead, you still had newcomers like Jeezy, The Game, Lupe Fiasco, Kanye West, T.I., who were keeping things really exciting and making the future of the genre look promising. But ultimately on this list, there are some strong projects, but these are the 10 biggest albums that year, right? Why would Nas say hip-hop is dead? Well, let's look at the biggest first week albums from 2003, just 3 years before that. Right off the rip, the top 3 projects on this list are all unilateral classics. Get Rich or Die Trying, Speaker Box, Ash the Love Below, the Black Album. And they were selling a lot more than the albums from 2006. But here's where it gets interesting. While Nas was screaming hip-hop was dead, and the sales were lower in 2006 when he said that than they had been in previous years, and the highest selling projects weren't as great as albums from prior years. If you look at the highest critically reviewed albums from 2006, the same year that Nas said hip-hop was dead, look at how many classics we have on this list. These are not the highest selling albums, but instead the ones that received the most praise. You got tons of classics over here. Clips, Hell Hath No Fury. J Dilla, Donuts, one of the best beat tapes, probably the best of all time. R.I.P. to J Dilla. Lupe Fiasco with what many consider his best project of all time. You have The Roots on here. Ghostface. The first 5 albums on this list, you can make an argument for them all being classics. So in this year that Nas said hip-hop was dead, the mainstream might have been dying, but the underground was thriving. And it goes back to my point where I said, it feels like hip-hop is dying now because we're getting less and less of these massive blockbuster type of albums each and every year, and it felt like that as well in 2006. Yes, there were a lot of classics, but less and less than years prior. And with labels at the time maybe seeing that direction and not investing as much into the superstars of the next generation back then, it opened the doors for the underground to thrive. It allowed artists to create from a place of passion rather than thinking in the back of their mind, I need the hits, or to be constrained to any degree. I just did a video on J. Cole. I'll leave a link in the description where he had a massive struggle at the beginning of his career because Roc Nation wouldn't allow him to put out his debut album until he had a hit. And because of that, it kind of compromised the overall sound of his first body of work into the mainstream public because he had to put all his best songs on his mixtapes to build hype for the project before he was allowed to actually release it. And he prioritized commercial appeal on that project over just creating from the soul, right? And if you look at 2025, we're getting a very similar picture. Here are the highest selling albums in the first week from this year. I go back and maybe listen to 1.5 of these projects. I don't count Mac Miller's album that was recorded in 2014. I like about half the Tyler project, and I love the Clips album. Those are the 2 on this list. But then, if you look at the highest critically reviewed albums of this year, you'll see a ton of amazing projects that existed in the underground. Earl Sweatshirt, Ghostface Killah, Mobb Deep, Billy Woods, Lil Sims, Freddie Gibbs and the Alchemist, JID, Saba and No ID, Chance the Rapper. They forgot to rate Ray Vaughn's album, I guess, because I don't see it here. Now, I'm not going to be the one to say that I'd rather hip-hop exist in the underground, because frankly, it's just not true. For me, at least. I love seeing the type of moments Kendrick had over the last few years, touching stages no rapper ever has before, like the Super Bowl, giving us bodies of work like GNX that could be played anywhere, universally, from the gym to the car, to when you're lying in bed just trying to digest the lyrics, the club, whatever the case is. I loved moments like 2007 and 8 when Lil Wayne was on top of the world, selling 1 million in the first week, bodying features left and right, giving us a new hit song every other week. I loved all the different massive runs Kanye West had or 50 Cent. To me, it's not that the numbers matter, it's that the moments that come when a rapper is at the top of their game in every facet always feel more special, more out of this world. And ultimately, that's not what I'm going to care about when I'm deciding what song to play in the car, but music is very nostalgia based, right? And when you tie a memory to the music, it adds a whole other layer to the connection that you actually have with that art. When I'm listening to The Drought 3, I'm thinking of Lil Wayne in his prime. When I go back and listen to GNX, I reminisce on 2024 and the moments that brought. 2014 Forest Hills Drive, I'm going back to the moments where I'm just starting college, going to see J. Cole perform live in an arena for the first time, and that album feeling larger than life compared to anything else that he had put out up to that point. The Migos, when they were dropping hit after hit, I remember I went to go see them at a festival. I was so dehydrated, I think I drank a little too much. I was like sitting on the grass, about to fall asleep. I couldn't move. I was like, I'm going home. And the second I heard them come on, the crowd screaming, they start rapping, "Mama told me not to sell work." I got a burst of energy like I never had before. I ran right into the crowd. And it was one of the best concert experiences I've ever had. My point is, these moments are hard to have if the labels don't see these acts as viable investments. The machine won't be behind them. So you won't hear these songs everywhere you go. The memories that you have attached to this music will be in the confines of your car or wherever else you're bumping music at, which is fine and all, but then there's less and less eyeballs on these artists. They can't go out on tour. That's another really dangerous looking stat right now. I told you guys earlier in this video, hip hop made up about 25% of all the music consumed in the world in 2023. Well, it only made up about 10% of all of the touring revenue in the world, which means that, yeah, people are listening to hip hop, but they're not actually paying to go out and watch different artists perform live. It's not all that matters, but the investment into the genre secures the ability for new superstars to emerge, for artists to have financial incentive to know that they could make a living off of the art that they produce. From a mainstream perspective right now, we're relying on Playboi Carti and NBA Youngboy to influence the new generation of the mainstream. Does that feel promising to you guys? I do say all that to say though, like I said earlier in this video, I think fans are just expecting more, and because of that, artists are confused on what they should drop or not. They don't want to flop. They don't want to receive the hate that a Lil Wayne or a Drake or a Young Thug has received when putting out work in 2025. So because of that, a lot of artists have not been dropping. But the ones who have, like a Chance the Rapper, are not scared of the pressures of what they're going to sell or how the fans are going to receive it. And because of that, we've got amazing bodies of work from them. And on the flip side, with that pressure being alleviated, where they're not worrying about how much they're going to sell, it can force them to create from a space of authenticity, of just pure passion, right? And that's why the underground can feel much more alive than the mainstream right now. And I think it's just a reset. I think people are just looking for more, and it will come with time. I don't think this is a situation like rock where it'll kind of just fizzle out of the mainstream and stay that way and live on in the underground. But I think the core problem lies in the next generation. It doesn't lie in a Kendrick Lamar or a Drake. It lies in the fact that we're relying on artists who are, in their second decade in, who are almost in their 40s to carry on the next chapter of where the genre will go. We need some new superstars to shake the game up, to drop cohesive bodies of work. That's why I keep praising artists like Doechii, because say what you want about her, but she dropped a phenomenal project and really puts a lot of thought, a lot of care into the craft that she releases into the world. And she's getting rewarded from both a commercial and a critical standpoint because of that. We need to see more of that. Now, the conversation doesn't end there, right? Because people are blaming this all on the beef. I think, again, it's more of a problem with the fact that this generation hasn't produced enough strong artists to where hip-hop can feel like it was on the level it was on in the 2010s, in the 2000s, in the 90s. But if you want to shift the focus onto Kendrick Lamar and how, he drops when he feels like it's the right time, he takes time off, he's not out here doing features every other week like Drake used to do. Meanwhile, hey, I'm not even going to touch on Drake because that conversation is the dumbest thing ever. If you think that it's Drake who has to come revive hip hop, Drake has never been more active than 2024 and 2025. He's given us like 40, 50 songs this year. He gave us a whole freaking album this year, right? If you're an OV-ho and you want to talk about hip hop is dead, start by focusing on the fact that your boy, your buddy, your favorite rapper is less inspired than ever, and it's directly reflected in the success of his recent music.
I study
less inspired than ever
for a living.
But no, let's focus on Kendrick, right? Because I really do think Kendrick took that crown in terms of being the biggest rapper from all facets. Commercial success, critical success, you just don't see him out as much, so it doesn't feel as omnipresent. But because we're in the dot era and hip-hop, has no top 40 hits and it feels more dry than ever before, people want to blame Kendrick. So let's take a look and debunk some theories here. Shout out to Chick Smooth. He put together a video with a bunch of different think pieces that I feel like are really important to this conversation. So let's take a look at a couple of them.
A lot of Drake fans started blaming Kendrick. People got on his head top and said, bro, this is all your fault, Kendrick. You're the reason Drake stopped caring about music. You're the reason Drake is no longer doing features that enables rap artists and also rap songs to be in the top 40. Somebody on Twitter said, I told y'all my only knock on Kendrick Lamar winning the battle was he's not going to create a pipeline of talented rappers for fans to gravitate to every couple of months. He barely even drops music. Drake was putting on new whack rappers that can make club music every single month. That's the difference.
So we touched on this earlier in this video, and I do think there is some gravity to this statement. Stick with me here. Every artist who has had a massive run at the top has ended up putting somebody else on, right? Look at Jay-Z. He had the Rockefeller movement. He put on Kanye West, Rihanna, J. Cole. There's an argument to be made for him being the most successful CEO in the game. Look at Eminem's run. We got D12, but most importantly, we got 50 Cent. And then look at 50's run. G-Unit was larger than life at one point. And then came Kanye West. Without Kanye, we may never see Kid Cudi, Big Sean. Pusha T's solo career may never look the same without Kanye West, right? How'd we get Daytona? Or It's Almost Dry, or My Name Is My Name. We may never see a Travis Scott without Kanye West. And the only other rapper competing with Kanye at the time of his prime was Lil Wayne. And look at what he did, right? Young Money, Drake, Nicki Minaj, Tyga. And then Drake went on to adopt this strategy of collaborating with people strategically, where he can then incorporate their sound, their lingo, their culture into his music. And at the same time, he was helping give more eyeballs to a lesser known artist. At a time, you'd hear all these newer rappers with a hit that had a Drake feature on it. So this guy here is saying that's what Drake did. That's why you kept hearing these club bangers with these Drake features. But then ultimately, now that Kendrick has the crown, now that he's the top guy, Drake is kind of boycotting America again. Kendrick's not the type to go out and do that. Well, to that, I would say a couple things. Number one, Kendrick has given us several features this year with different artists, from Playboi Carti, SZA, The Clips. And I agree that doesn't make up for what, Drake had been doing or what Lil Wayne had been doing with his monstrous feature run, right? But all I'll say to you is this. Give it time. I have said in previous videos, I think one thing missing from this massive victory lap Kendrick went on was a monstrous feature run. Something like what J. Cole did in 2018 or what Lil Wayne did in 2008. But like I've said probably 4 times in this video, Kendrick moves on his own time. Kendrick is very intentional with the art he puts out. Kendrick gave us an album less than a year ago. It's still the best-selling album this year. And he's been on tour for the last year. Kendrick has his own record label in PG Lang. Kendrick helped put on Baby Keem. Kendrick has written for Baby Keem. Baby Keem's biggest song is with Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick put a bunch of lesser-known artists onto GNX, a bunch of whom got their first top 10 hit because of that. A bunch of whom got a massive surge in their Spotify monthly listeners and even a record deal. AZ Chike was signed to Warner Brothers, most likely due to the new eyeballs and success that he had from his feature on Peekaboo. Let the dust settle, let Kendrick get back to work, or let him chill. Again, the guy was just on tour. And we can't rely on one artist. But if you are looking at one artist to say this is the dot era, he needs to come in and co-sign a bunch of new artists, put some people on, give us some massive collaborations, some massive moments with different artists. I don't think that's necessarily an unreasonable expectation. Again, all I would say is that we got GNX less than a year ago and he's been on tour ever since. Let's see what the future holds. My prediction is Kendrick will indeed go on a crazy feature run over the next few years. But if you want some ridiculousness, let's listen to what this guy has to say.
I want y'all to take a bow with me. Hip-hop is no longer charting in 35 years. And the person that is solely responsible for this is one Kendrick Lamar. Little small bastard from Compton, California. An individual who had to go to a music CEO just to try to get another guy replaced as the #1 guy. Then his little short ass proceeded to get washed up rappers and producers to help him diss this guy, just for him to get barred up so fucking bad he had to go with a PDF file route. Didn't find any charges to stick on this man with the PDF file route, even though millions of stupid ass black people rallied behind the song. Rallied behind it so fucking much that it won him Grammys in a room full of actual PDF files. And then this individual decides to go seek out Playboi Carti, drop 3 features that did less than cow shit. And now that same individual is the sole owner of a song called Watch the Party Die, where he's claiming the industry is coming to an end or to some type of new beginning. And the only thing that resorted in that was hip hop has died. But leave it up to the good culture police. This man is doing everything right for black people. Yet he just killed our genre. May he rest in
What I find so funny is that even Drake himself admitted on the Heart Part 6 that he thought Not Like Us was a great song. So why is it so hard for these people to fathom that the success of that song derived from the fact that it was just a great record? I live in Canada, right? I'm surrounded by OV hoes. Even the OV hoes here are reasonable enough to say that that was an amazing song. I've been in the club with my friends who are massive Drake fans, who are still singing Not Like Us word for word when that song comes on at a party. When a song is undeniable like that, the people gravitate towards it and the labels put money behind it. I'm sorry that it hurt the feelings of your favorite artist, but that has nothing to do with hip-hop being in the dry state that it's in. In fact, again, Not Like Us was one of the biggest hits we've seen in the last 10-20 years.
DJ Head responded back to the CNN article asking, are we living through a rap drought? The Billboard charts suggest we are. DJ Head had a very long and passionate response back to it. He said this headline is misleading because it lacks nuance. Billboard charts are not the end all. However, it is a metric we all accept, which is great. However, the charts have undergone so many changes over the years that reclassify hits. What has not changed over the years are hit records. Like it or not, that's what drives business and will continue to do so. We all love the spirit of rap competition. However, the biggest ones always had both in order to ascend to the stratosphere of metrics. AKA, if your favorite artist was making a fucking hit song, he also would be on the Billboard Top 40 charts. Now DJ Head goes on to say, my messaging has remained the same over time. It's not about making songs for me on my radio stations. It's about crafting musical experiences that will last beyond virality and allow you and your families to eat in this system of things. These thoughts are mine. Make records.
And I think this is the ultimate point that people should be focusing on, right? It's that if you want more music on the charts, simply make better records. Like I said before about Not Like Us. Not Like Us was on the charts because it was an amazing song. You want me to give Drake some credit? Not Like Us broke all the streaming records that were previously held by Drake's song God's Plan. God's Plan broke all those streaming records initially because it was also a great song. Did he write it? I don't know, but it was a good song. I'm just going to say it. I think a lot of the newer acts in the mainstream right now are just not making good songs. Flat out. I'm sorry. I like the old NBA Youngboy records. Go listen to his new stuff. It's all over the place. There's no melodies that stand out. The song structure is not strong. I liked some of the Playboi Carti stuff, but in my opinion, a lot of my critiques on Youngboy can also be applied to Carti. I think this gives us the opportunity to find these artists ourselves, not let the algorithms or the radio force us into listening to what we listen to. Dig for it on your own until you find something that moves you. Don't focus on the Twitter discourse and the narratives on who's the best selling, who sold this, who charted the highest. It's music at the end of the day, right? You're not thinking about what position the song had on the Hot 100 when you're listening to it in your car. And to the artists, like I said earlier in this video, this opens up a lane for them to focus on making cohesive bodies of work that will stand the test of time instead of trying to chase a Billboard position or a TikTok trend. And I think that's what's going to open the floodgates for a brand new inspired era to emerge within hip-hop. One that might not be focused on the clubs and the TikToks. Anthony Fantano echoed that point as well. I think he made some great points here.
You may or may not have heard, but it seems that hip-hop is not doing super crazy on the charts right now, as I guess the top 40 currently is just devoid of it completely, and this seems to just be like worrying a lot of people to death at the moment, especially since this is the first time this has happened since like, I guess, the 1990s. First off, this may just be the effect of some really big pop albums having dropped recently, and you have artists like Taylor Swift who are basically taking up numerous spots in the top 40 right now through Life of a Showgirl. Just kind of is what it is. That is just how massively popular she is in this moment. But then in addition to that, you sort of have a lot of hip-hop's solid hit makers of the past 10 plus years pretty much slipping in terms of commercial relevance. Either that or it's been a minute since they've come out with something. And if that is the case, I don't know, so be it. If anything, seeing rap music slip off commercially for a short period of time could be good for the genre, could encourage artists and listeners to not listen to music with fucking calculators and decide what is good and what is hot and what is not based upon however many streams it's getting on any given day, which is like just about one of the worst deciders you could use to pick what is of artistic merit and what isn't. Maybe instead, once we stop worrying about the numbers and who is doling out hits, we can actually just like start listening to the music again and deciding what's good and what's not based on just how it sounds and how it appeals to us personally. I mean, a lot of the newer, younger artists out there, including some of these rage kids, like they're just making music for their niche and their audience that wants to hear that sound. They can give a fuck about what like has pop appeal. And while I'm not saying other artists should like follow suit and do exactly what they're doing, maybe instead they should follow a similar ethos and ask themselves, what is it I want to hear? Screw the charts. What are the sorts of sounds and aesthetics and songwriting ideas that I personally think are exciting? And let me chase after that instead of worrying about what's going to result in a hit.
So ultimately, do you guys think this is the end of hip-hop? Do you think Kendrick was the one responsible for killing it, even though he's been the one putting up the highest charting activity for this entire year that everyone's been proclaiming has left hip-hop dead? Let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you in the next one.
I study
Rapaholics
for a living.